I need for my viewers to listen to this, please. This information is just coming across the wire. Today is Friday. 3 days have now passed pertaining to the election. The election that whenever Donald Trump declared victory around 2 o'clock that morning, I deciphered what was going on. God spoke to my heart and said, Dennis, the Republicans have not won this election. The Democrats have won this election. Now you keep in mind, I've tried my darndest to stay as far away from this towards not giving any type of advice to anybody, because I don't perceive myself as me being a politician. I perceive myself as me being more in the arena of being a preacher, an evangelist, a teacher, a spiritual counselor, or even a spiritual advisor. So it's very difficult for me to walk this tight line of knowing the position that God has placed me in versus the position. Pebbles, get over and lay down. Peanut's fixing to tear you up. I got a feeling that he's going to get you. I've got this little dog, and they're trying to become acquainted here in the household together. And I heard Peanut growling a while ago. She's only 3.5 pounds. She's soaking wet, and she won't get no bigger because she's an adult dog already. She only weighs 3.5 pounds. And they're trying to become acquainted with each other so that they can live in harmony together. And I'm having difficulty. Matter of fact, the other day, my cat attacked me whenever I was trying to keep them separated. But the people have made a choice. And like I told you a while ago, I was trying to stay out of this because I'm not a politician. God has not called me into the arena of being a politician. I'm more of a spiritual guidance counselor or a messenger, somebody that's to bring a message unto the people, we the people. So I try to stay as clear away as I can with politics. Then there's no doubt I was leaning more towards, if I'd seen anybody get elected, I was leaning more towards Biden, the Biden ticket, because I like the Biden ticket pertaining to fossil fuels and alternative fuels and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in which Donald Trump is still in denial of, in which, if I'm not mistaken, we got another possible tropical storm that could lead into another hurricane that could very well hit America again before another week's in. So please listen, because there's a lot on the line here, and it's not so much that there's any more or less on the line today than what it was on the last election. It's just that more people have gotten involved. And because more people have gotten involved, because they have broken records all over America pertaining to people actually getting out and voting, going to the polls, it becomes more magnetized. And because it becomes more magnetized, it makes the problems look bigger. But the thing about it is, the problem that was big 4 years ago is still big today. The problem that we was all trying to wrap our minds around pertaining to global health care, it's still that same problem today. Even though there may be 3 times as more people that's paying attention to the problem, it's still the same problem. The road, the potholes, the bridges that need to be reworked, the whole system basically that needs to be reformulated from the top to the bottom. Those are still the same problems today as what there was before the election. It just so happens we got more people. We got more eyes now on this particular election because people have decided to become involved. I think the reason why the majority of the people haven't become involved is because the majority of the people knew that the system basically was broken and that there was nothing that they could do. But it had reached a point in this election that they just felt like that they had to get out and voice their opinion to, I'm telling you right now, you're misbehaving. Towards doing something because they realize that we are at our point of Achilles' heel. So as you listen to Madam Speaker of the House, keep in mind, please, to my viewers, that I, an hour later, prayed about this. I even prayed about it again yesterday morning. I said, God, please, regardless of what my decision may have been, bring in the proper politician that is best for America, even if it means discrediting what that I had originally projected of the Biden ticket. And I prayed it earnestly, and I let it go. I said, God's will be done. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us our sins, etc., etc., etc. Lead us, O Lord, not into temptation, but deliver us from this evil. The things that have went on in the past 4 years have been so disruptive in our system that it has only added insult to misery. And I'm so glad that somebody out there has been paying attention in recognizing that we do need to swap horses, because the horse that we was on was obviously not doing its job. So this is a formal as well as a authentic as well as a official rebuke going to the Republican Party that the horse that they had in there was obviously not the right horse, because it has thrown this country into chaos. Please listen.
Day, with Joe Biden having the tremendous mandate that he has, and that pretty soon the hyphen will be gone from Vice President to President-elect Joe Biden. It's a happy day for our country, because Joe Biden is a unifier, because he is determined to bring people together, because he respects all points of view, and as he has said, I ran as a Democrat, I'll govern as president for all of the people, whether they voted for me or not. So I am so officially pleased with the outcome that is imminent, and also personally delighted because of the quality and caliber of leadership that Joe Biden will provide. This morning it is clear that the Biden-Harris ticket will win the White House. His election is historic, propelled by the biggest vote ever in the history of our country, 73.8 million and counting Americans, the most votes ever received by any presidential ticket in history. President-elect Biden has a strong mandate to lead, and he'll have a strong Democratic House with him, and many Democrats in the Senate. This has been a life or death fight for the fate of our democracy, as he says, the soul of our country. We did not win every battle in the House, but we did win the war. In 2018, we won 40 seats, 30 or 31 of them in districts where Trump had won before. They were in Trump districts. In preparation for the 2020 election, I said to people, you have to help us. They said, oh, you've won. Let's just do the Senate and the White House. And no, we won in districts, Trump districts, with Trump not on the ballot. In the next election, he will be on the ballot, and that makes winning those districts a steeper climb. I'm pleased that we've overwhelmingly won those districts.
You've made a statement. In other words, you just didn't just win, you actually made a statement by taking over areas that ordinarily was Republican, ordinarily was red, you've made a statement towards saying the people are onto this. They don't like this. They're rejecting this. This is a form of rebuke, and it is legal, and it has went on here in America pertaining to our elections, which proves once more that communism in other parts of the world is dead. Because it comes a time that people need to recognize what we, the people, stand for. Like I said, I didn't cast my vote this year because of several different things. I guess one of the main things was because of the way that I was attacked here in my home county, in Weakley County, in West Tennessee. Illegitimately attacked, simply because of David and I being concerned over some children. I've never been so heartbroken by seeing how the system can actually be manipulated. But in this particular event, in this particular voting process, the system has worked. It has not been manipulated. They are paying very close attention to every vote, and because of it, the next president of the United States of America to the free world will be the Biden ticket.
Not all of them. Not all of them. But next time, he won't be on the ballot. One of the reasons we were able to win so many seats was because of the caliber of leadership of our members. Some of them won, a few did not, all of them excellent. And I hope that some of them will consider going at it again. As you all know, the right to vote is a sacred right in our country.
Exactly.
And, having that vote counted as cast is the foundation of our democracy. So we must be patient. I said to people, be calm. I said this Monday, to be calm, be confident, be patient. And the votes are tallied, the races are called. We look forward to continued victories in House races. We have some out there. And we look forward to progress for the people, which was our agenda in 2018, continues to be for the people. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks by building infrastructure of America in a green way, cleaner government, H.R. 1, which will be the first on the agenda in January. Again, it will be H.R. 1. While we prepare for the new Biden administration, we must also move swiftly for a new coronavirus relief bill. To continue that, we want the Republicans to come back to the table, the White House, the leadership, whatever. 100 for 2 days in a row, over 100,000 cases were reported. The imperative to act could not be...
What did she just say? Over the past 200 days, there's been over 100 cases a day reported? That's outstanding. In a bad way, pertaining to how the coronavirus is wreaking havoc in various areas. Wow. I knew it was intensifying. I just didn't know that it was intensifying that much. 100,000 cases have been dialogued into the system for the past 2 days of the pandemic. Oh my God. Mr. Fauci needs to speak up. Dr. Fauci needs to speak up pertaining to what's going on here. Once more, mask mandated. Staying away from each other if you can. Let this virus do its thing and die itself out in a way that it can no longer feed upon one human being to another is, I think, the only way that we're going to be able to get over this hump and go on about our lives. But once more, me as a spiritual person, me as a spiritual advisor, has to put in the equation of what God has allowed for me to know in the eyes of the spirit world towards how the Heavenly Father has basically lifted his hand of protection, his umbrella of protection away from not just the Americans, but away from the world, and has allowed for this infection to come upon to society because of all the sorrows, of all the sin, of how the wickedness of humanity has been participating in the past few years, pertaining to all these abortions, all these homosexual acts, all these other things that violate God's principles and God's set of rules. I have to throw that in as a spiritual advisor or a minister of God. I have to throw that in. If not, I'll be held accountable in the eyes of God one day towards God saying, how come you didn't warn them? How come you didn't tell them? So I've got to do my part too. I've got responsibilities too. Not only do I have my priorities in separating mankind from spiritual kind, but I've got my priorities towards what God has recommended for me to do, just like me giving out advisories pertaining to a bloody road ahead, just like me giving out advisories towards major electrical disturbances to come. These was all given to me to give to you, to give to my viewers. Though it was misinterpreted, though it wasn't handled right up in Kentucky and over in Oklahoma and right here in the state of Tennessee, it was still me doing that in which what I was recommended or required to do towards me telling you what God has told me to tell you. Even though I got punished for doing it, I still told you. Now it's up to you of making the right decisions towards what you want to do. Because once more, I can't make you do the right thing. And yes, you do have a choice. Either do the wrong thing or the right thing. Well, it looks like enough people was paying attention this time in this election towards at least changing the harness off of the horse that was going in the wrong direction and putting it on a horse that maybe will take us in the right direction. We are in the center of the eye of the storm right now, pertaining to a crisis. And it's not just about the pothole down the road. It's not just about the infrastructure pertaining to the bridge needs repainting, or we need to widen the bridge, or we need to do this. It's everything in general from A to Z, from health care to our tax structure, to us being $25 trillion in debt, to us almost having 3 million incarcerated prisoners in jail, pertaining to our drug problem, pertaining to our suicide problem, pertaining to us not taking care of our veterans, not taking care of our senior citizens. I could go on and on and on down the bucket list towards the things that the American people should have been doing that they haven't been doing. And they for darn sure haven't been paying attention to the signs of the great horrors that has fallen upon to America, not just in the year 2020, but for the past 4 or 5 years. These things have been intensifying, pertaining to floods, fires, famines, and now a pandemic and all the hurricanes. You do the math. You do the math. And it's not fuzzy math. Like George Bush Sr. requested during his presidency. It's not fuzzy math whenever you add 2 plus 2 equals 4. 4 plus 4 equals 8. You have to be realistical in where we are right now. And there's been enough people in America that has finally acknowledged that we was buckled up to the wrong horse. The Donald Trump horse. God only knows where we'd have wound up in another 2 or 3 or 4 years from now if they would have reelected this guy. You talk about people being sick. We would have possibly all been sick. We wouldn't have even thrived as a nation any longer if we would have handled it. This guy has made so many people mad across the waters, across the pond. I'm really surprised that some of our allies that have basically retaliated in ways towards no longer wanting to be our allies. I'm really surprised that we haven't gotten some really, really harsh input coming from some of our allies across the pond. They can see this. They're paying attention to us over here. They're not stupid to what's going on. The people north of us up in Canada, the Frenchmen, they're not stupid. They know what's going on down here. You know, back a few years ago, they actually made it an open, known, I guess it was an appeal in a way, of how come the American people's credit rating wasn't a 3-star versus a 4-star, even though America owed the money that America owed. That was kind of like Mexican making their appeal that the drug problem in America wouldn't be the drug problem in America if the supply and demand wasn't so high. Anytime you got a demand, you got a supply. And there's no doubt probably 90% of the drugs that come from places like Colombia and Honduras and all those other places are part of what has contaminated America towards putting America on the wrong path towards wanting to have all these drugs to begin with in contaminating us. We have been sabotaged. We have been sabotaged in probably, I'm going to say 10 or more different areas. And I'm going to say the worst thing that we've been sabotaged in, and I know that a lot of people aren't going to agree with what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say the main thing that we've been sabotaged in is that people have walked away from their true identity with their relationship with God. You can go to church every day the doors is open, but that doesn't mean that you're in good standards with God. You have to be in good standards with God if you're going to maintain a relationship with God. And once God gets tired of the disobedience and there's no more room for ignorance, that's whenever great retribution falls out of the sky in one form or the other. And it not only falls out of the sky, but it also falls onto our streets, pertaining to all this violence and all these protesters and seeing these cops kill these black men and having all this police brutality going on here in America. People need to wake up and understand the reality of where the American people actually are right now. Right now. 3 days later after the election in the year 2020. And if they don't wake up, it's no one's fault but your own. Thank God. It appears like there's enough people out there that has awoken, that has decided we was buckled up to the wrong, illegitimate leader, Donald J. Trump.
Greater over 9.5 million, nearly 9.5 million people infected, nearly 250,000 deaths, and tens of millions on unemployment. Again, I'm calling on the administration to come back to the table. Congress is also committed to passing an omnibus appropriations bill. This is the core of our work in the lame duck when we don't have a pandemic killing hundreds of thousands of people and infecting millions and making people food insecure, housing insecure, and the rest. But our responsibility to keep government open, to have an omnibus bill, and we intend to do that, not a CR, and we want to be able to do so in a way that gives confidence that we will have government open and continue to be, rather than having a CR. So, Sadly, instead of crushing the virus, it appears that the Trump administration will use its final moments in office as a desperate last step to destroy every possible protection for American health and well-being. So many people have said to me, and perhaps some of you along the way,
there we have
what
House Speaker Nancy
damage do you
Pelosi saying a
think that Trump
coronavirus
will
bill
do
is still
between
a
losing
top
the
priority
election
for
and the
the
swearing-in?
House Democrats in the wake of what she says is a Joe Biden victory. We're going to go bring that to Mary Bruce. Of course, you cover Capitol Hill every single day. The politics so dicey there. We saw in the negotiations between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin of the Trump administration in the days leading up to the election that Senate Republicans were not going to go along with anything they were negotiating. Any sense that that could change now?
I mean, they are still just fundamentally completely apart on what they want here. The two sides cannot agree on how much money to spend and on what to spend it on. We know that Republicans, Mitch McConnell actually just spoke to reporters, and he still seems to be, eyeing a smaller, more targeted deal than the $2 trillion package that Democrats have been eyeing all along. Mitch McConnell, has in many ways taken a bit of a backseat in some of these negotiations, letting House Speaker Pelosi work this out with the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin. But McConnell has made clear he does want to get this done by the end of the year. You hear Speaker Pelosi saying that is going to be the top priority.
Before we continue on, I want to say one thing about what she was just talking about pertaining to the coronavirus. There's spots right here in West Tennessee, regardless whether it be Union City, Kenton, Sharon, Greenfield, Martin, Gleason, Medina. More so in this area, even over towards Reelfoot Lake, Lake County, and Dyer County. Or not Dyer County, but in Lake County over here. Over towards Reelfoot Lake. There's still spots that you can walk into, various grocery stores or meat markets or businesses, that don't give one hoot about whether or not you're wearing a mask or you're not wearing a mask. Because the majority of people in that business aren't wearing masks. Okay? I just heard where there was a church down in Dyer County, which is give or take about 35, 40 miles from where I live here, over in the Dyersburg, Tennessee area, where one church has lost 7 members just within the past few months over the coronavirus. 7 members in one church. Now, I guarantee you, if you was to try to step foot in that church or get around any of the members in that church without a mask, somebody would be very, very concerned towards throwing up a red flag and how come you don't have a mask on. This coronavirus isn't so much mysterious as the influences that it's bringing on to society, because there is still a great deal of society out there that still does not believe that it is real. And the reason why that they don't think it's real is because it hadn't come home to them yet. Either a friend or a loved one or someone in their household has not gotten the coronavirus to the point of seeing it become lethal. And because they're still in denial, they're still thinking that it's a hoax. Well, who started those influences? Who was projecting that imagery out there to society? It was no one else but Mr. President Donald Trump. Now, he can say what he wants to say about not wanting to start a panic, in which I agree. You shouldn't want to start a panic if a panic is not deserved towards wanting to start a panic. But there does come a time, if you was in a theater and you knew without a shadow of a doubt that the theater was on fire, or there was a gunman in the theater, there does come a time that it is the right thing to do to cry, fire, fire, fire. Because you know that there's problems that could wind up killing all of us. And maybe if some of us can escape the building, maybe it won't be such of a tragedy if at least some of us get out. And that's the line that Donald Trump wasn't willing to cross. He wasn't willing to cross that line in going ahead and bringing such undesirable moments in the American people's eyes pertaining to starting a panic. And he took the risk over people's lives rather than starting a panic by trying to tone it down. He toned the situation down because he didn't want to start a panic. By him not wanting to start a panic is probably the reason why our death rate here in America is steadily not declining, but going up, inclining. Once more, when you have a poor taste of leadership, when you have a poor leader that's basically leading people off into the mouth of the volcano, you have to recognize that this man is basically a madman. He's wrong in his senses, in his abilities to lead a group of people. You know, it's one thing if you want to walk off into the mouth of the volcano and you do so on your own pertaining to being suicidal. But don't do it at the expense of us. To whom much is given, much is required. Much is required in our leaders. It doesn't matter if it's our American leaders or other leaders of the world. Much is required, and the reason why is because of these type of influences. Donald Trump was the man that held the mic, talking to over 90 million people every time he uttered a word. He had the big mic. He was on center stage. And now the Biden people are realizing, my God, this man was basically a madman that was leading all of us to our deaths. He had made so many people mad overseas. And there's no doubt some of the things that Donald Trump done was good pertaining to our veterans and recognizing these various cities that was taking care of these illegals that shouldn't have been doing that. Recognizing that a great deal of the drug problem was still coming out of our neighboring nation pertaining to Mexico, coming up through South America, etc., etc. But at the same time, he wasn't recognizing other factors. He wasn't recognizing the signs coming from the heavens pertaining to global warming. He didn't want to give in areas pertaining to recognizing the problems with the coronavirus that should have given out a stronger alert. Him being the watchman on the wall and telling people that this stuff is deadly and can kill you. Just like that church that I'm telling you about down there in Dyer County in Dyersburg somewhere that has lost 7 members. Now you can't tell me that if you got with those members that they wouldn't be thoroughly convinced that the coronavirus was real. Or the people in New York City or in other parts of the country that this coronavirus has struck and really put people to their knees. Please understand the crucial times that we're in right now in the form of real reality, because this is our legacy of where we go on from this moment on. The path in the middle of the road, you know, we're at our Y or our T. This is our Cephresis. We've reached the top of the mountain. Now which way do we go? Do we go to the far right? Do we go to the far left? We have to have good leadership. Not just political leadership, but spiritual leadership. And we have to recognize the people that have misled us and the people that are trying to help us. This ministry here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, has tried to help the will of the people. But at the same time, there are certain areas that I cannot compromise in. There are certain areas that I refuse to compromise in because I know the will of God, and the will of God is more crucial than the will of man, even at the expense of everybody forsaking me, including my family, including my son, all my friends. To know that I'm doing the right thing by telling people the right thing is, in fact, the right thing.
The two parties agree they need to do something. And George, I just don't think we can lose sight of the fact that there are millions of Americans across this country desperately looking to Washington for some kind of economic help, some kind of lifeline. Those lifelines that they passed earlier in the spring have all run dry, essentially. They agree they have to do something, but they just have not been able to bridge this gap now for months. It is going to be the top priority when they get back to Washington. But they...
You know, I was just talking to somebody last night that I couldn't even begin to fathom how things had become so harsh in America during the state of World War II, to the point that there was soup lines everywhere in America, people starving to death, hobos and bums was notorious, and rationing tires, rationing gas, rationing food, having stamps that you had to go by. And if you used up all your stamps, well, then you was basically left out in the cold. I just couldn't begin to fathom how that those poor people had to survive under those same conditions. And believe it or not, with this coronavirus thumping on our back doors the way that it is, we could actually fall into that same category in some sort of way. I don't know if it would be S&H green stamps or what it would be, but we could actually fall into some sort of major category that would be similar towards what our ancestors had to go through during the era of World War II. Because basically we are under siege right now. We are in war. A war of survival. It may not be a combat war as far as seeing bullets and bombs blowing up, but we're still trying to survive. You got people out here that don't know if they're going to be able to live in their same apartment or their same home that they was living in. Right now, the repo industry is going wild. Absolutely wild towards going out here and repoing people's automobiles. Don't think for a second that these financial institutions and these banks are going to stand idly by towards having some of these $10, $12, $15, $25,000 automobiles out here floating around and ain't nobody making payments on them. And ain't nobody willing to call them up towards making any type of restitution towards how that they're going to reinvent a brand new plan. Don't think that these people ain't going to sit back and just let this happen to them. They will hire people to go out and find those automobiles, and they will repo those automobiles.
They do also have a lot of other big item things that they need to accomplish. You heard Speaker Pelosi mentioning that funding deadline that is on December 11th. They have until then to try and avoid a government shutdown. I think both parties have a vested interest in avoiding that as well. But
what did she just say? Listen to this.
But they do also have a lot of other big item things that they need to accomplish. You heard Speaker Pelosi mentioning that funding deadline that is on December 11th. They have to accomplish. You heard Speaker Pelosi mentioning that funding deadline that is on December 11th. accomplish. You heard Speaker Pelosi mentioning that funding deadline that is on December 11th.
Funding deadline. That means come December the 11th, the American government will no longer have sufficient funds in operating as a government unless it borrows more money. That will even put the American people that much further in debt towards going in the red. People need to wake up. They need to reanalyze where we are as a whole, as a society. And it just didn't get this way in one or two administrations. This has taken over ever since we had fuzzy math pertaining to the Bush, not only Junior era, but the Bush and Reagan era that has placed us illegitimately where we are right now, monetarily speaking, of being bankrupt. We have to recognize what has happened here. If we don't, it could happen again. But we're going to have to back up and do like the little farmer, and we're going to have to replant the crop back over again. I have said that all along, and I'll continue to say that to my viewers. Economically, financially, monetarily, we're going to have to do that if we plan on our children and our children's children and their children in ever having an acceptable future for them to have a chance at the golden ring, at the brass ring. I'm going to leave it right there because I don't want to be too lengthy in all this. I'm so glad to see that the Speaker of the House, somebody officially has come out today and made it official that it looks like the Biden ticket will in fact be the winning ticket. Good luck to all of us as we end our program here every time we put out a message, or we try to. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. God bless America. God bless the people that's in America that are reaching for a more righteous, holy, professional, perfect, not only perfect union, but a perfect way that our Heavenly Father anticipates for us all to live under.